I want also to know what is your impression toward the evolution of press freedom in Cambodia?
That's a very complicated question. I think that Cambodian journalists face a lot of challenges. This morning I went to the Club of Cambodian Journalists and had a wonderful conversation that lasted a couple of hours, and we talked about some of these issues, about things like about how difficult it is to make the transition to a completely open and independent media system, and how you have to think about things like the law. But the law isn't enough. You also have to have a good court system, and you have to have public understanding of the importance of independent media, and journalists have to also be very professional in the way they do their jobs, and to try to untangle all of those things can be quite complicated. I think we also have to look at ownership of media, and I think that Cambodia is similar to a number of other countries in the region. I think similar to Malaysia, for example.
Which point that you
Well, I think that Malaysia, like Cambodia, many of the media outlets are connected to the ruling coalition, and there's certainly good journalists in all of these organizations, but in my view it's very important for media to be independent from the people they report on, and journalists should be an independent monitor of power. But I was surprised to see how I think Cambodian journalists are very conscious of that, and really want to move more in the direction of independence, and I was impressed with that.
You see more independent journalists now? Or?
Well, certainly the young people are very independent thinkers, and I found that very impressive. They're very idealistic about the future, and one of the things, I taught a short writing class at DMC,
yes.
And one of the things we were talking about is how journalists can really focus on issues of importance to the citizens. You know, if you can do a really good story on an important topic that the citizens need to understand, that's a really important way of bringing about change. I think there are plenty of opportunities for Cambodian journalists right now to do really excellent reporting.
Okay, what do you see that what is they need to improve more? Journalist student.
Well, I think that more of them need to actually become journalists. My understanding is that a lot of young people who are studying journalism hope to get careers in public relations.
Yes, yes, I also noticed it.
I know, and I think the reason for that is that journalists don't get paid that well. And I was interested. That was certainly something that the Club of Cambodian Journalists talked about the importance of, a really good salary, so that you can, because I think in a lot of countries, there are a lot of temptations for journalists to accept pay for other kinds of work, and that's not good. Journalists need to serve the public and not be accepting money from people they're covering. So I think maybe Cambodian journalists need to be paid more. But another thing that I was very impressed with is that even if the students who are studying journalism don't become journalists, they're still going to be important members of civil society who understand why we need to have independent media, why we need to have media that can really monitor what's going on and report to the people.
So according to you, we have to encourage more students to become journalists, not public.
That's right, and I think one way to do that is that media companies need to pay more money, which everybody likes. This is a big problem in Indonesia, I think probably more so than here. Yeah, they talk about journalism envelope journalism, meaning that often if there's a press conference, the journalist will get a little packet of money, and the idea is to then report favorably on whoever's doing the press conference, and that's bad. A journalist has to be independent of the people they're covering.
We also notice one thing is that now in Cambodia there are more and more young journalist people who create their own blog to talk about what they have been doing. Related to journalism. What do you think about it?
Well, I think that's great. One of the things that so impresses me is how Cambodia, having gone through this really traumatic history, that young people seem to feel so free to express themselves and to say what they think. sometimes when they ask questions, you know, they make a big statement first and it's hard to hear what the question is, but I really like that. I feel like it's so great that young people can express themselves and have strong opinions. And I think that social media and Facebook and YouTube, this is all a reflection of that. But one thing I tried to emphasize to the students is what separates Facebook from journalism is that journalism has been verified. Before there's a story on CNC, someone has verified it. You know, you've checked the facts, you've edited it, you've made sure that it's factual, it's valid, it's true. And we can't believe everything we see on Facebook or read on Twitter or see on YouTube. So
it's
yes.
sometimes dangerous also.
Well, it can be. It can be. I think it can be a very powerful tool. I think it's much harder for anybody to keep a secret now because there's always somebody there with a cell phone with a camera, and I think it's harder for governments, any government, to control information. But I think we also have to be. I think we, the public, have to be very aware of how the difference between journalism, which by definition has been verified, and what we see on Facebook.
Now we are at the end of the interview. I just want you to give some advice to the students who want to become a journalist, future journalist in Cambodia.
Wow, that's hard to do. I guess I feel like the important thing to remember is that the role of journalism in a democracy is to bring important and valid and true information to the citizens so they can make good political decisions. That a democracy depends on citizens being aware of what's going on and being able to make good choices. And to me, the idea that as a journalist, your role is to bring true information to the citizens so they can make wise political decisions, that's an incredibly noble occupation. What could be more noble than that, than to help the citizens make good choices? And so in order to do that, you have to be truthful, you have to serve the public, you have to be independent, you can't take money from anybody, and I think that young journalists are ready to do that.